recording later on, has a story. And of course, I encourage people to Google me and to hear a little bit, but I'll give you in a nutshell my story. I'm a survivor of childhood abuse and family violence. So that's how I came to the work. Not just as a victim, but also in a survivor, but also as a perpetrator of teen dating violence. And so I'm not proud of that fact, but it's a part of my story. It's part of how I came to the work. It's a lot of my experiences at the hands of other men and sort of the examples that men were giving me the men in my family, the men in my community here in Austin, men at school, etc. Kind of reinforce these ideas that were unhealthy, that were problematic, that were abusive. And so I ended up being abusive early on my early teen dating relationships. I'm not ashamed. I'm ashamed of that, but I'm not ashamed of saying that because it's part of how I came to this work. And that was also a result of the abuse that I experienced, right? We hear this phrase that hurt people hurt people. From women early on, like you need to do more. Emiliano, you need to do more. And so we formed Texas Men Speak, right? And Texas Men Speak has been really transformative for me because those spaces have been, again, exclusively for men, online with men from all over the state who are engaged in a range of issues, not just like victim advocacy, but men who are doing men's mental health, fatherhood work, men's sexual health, etc. So this is just a collection of guys who are engaging in a pretty intensive discussions, from toxic masculinity to accountability. Like, for example, this week's discussion is about how do we hold each other accountable? How do we hold ourselves accountable as men when we engage in problematic or abusive sexist behavior? And so, and then the final session is really about what do we do next, right? What is our call to action? And so after that final session, we encourage men to begin to organize and to educate men in their communities. And so post that series, we do a leadership academy for those men who are ready to do the work of organizing and educating other men. And so we have a 6-part leadership academy where we invite men who have completed that series at any point over the last 5 years to come back and to learn from other men who are doing similar organizing work. And the idea is to create these chapters, what we're calling Texas Men Speak chapters around the state, right? Of men locally who are meeting with men in person and having these discussions and who are organizing around these issues and who are supporting their local rape crisis center. As volunteers, as donors, as board members, whatever, like we want men to get involved at the local level. And so we're in the process of beginning that chapter project. So we have a number of chapters. We have 2 chapters currently happening in Marble Falls and in Tyler, Texas. And we're working on developing a chapter here in Austin. And so my role is to coordinate and to train these chapters, to support them, and to support individual men who are engaged in the work. And so I see a man on my screen. And so I want to invite you to join us for a future discussion series, or any of the male volunteers, board members, staff that you have at your agency, right? Like, while we're winding down the current discussion series, we have these every other quarter. And so the next one will probably be in the winter. And so we're gonna, it's open to men, adult men specifically, who are engaged in the work or who want to be engaged in the work. And those discussions are free and open to the public. So you can invite other men in your community to be a part of those discussions. And then we're also working with centers that are interested in starting a chapter of their own. And so if your center is interested in doing that kind of work, I'm happy to partner with you to help develop and train, men in your community to start a chapter and to hold these discussions locally. And that's really the idea, is that at some point I'd like to retire. But part of this is knowing that men are continuing in my place or in communities around the state, that they're continuing to do the work. of organizing and educating other boys and men. So that's training in terms of um, behavior that's not age appropriate. And that's an important indicator for our children, infants all the way to teenagers, right? They're saying things, they're behaving in ways, they're demonstrating things, they're acting out in ways that are not age appropriate. There's just some things that only adults would know or be able to understand, or and so if you see kids acting out, that's an important indicator just to pay attention to. The other thing I would say is what's I gonna say? There was another that I had about that. This is why, well, the response to that is why it's so important to talk to boys and men from a very early age. And this was a conversation we had with my infant son when he was an infant. He's a teenager now, taller, bigger than me. But it's an ongoing conversation and an age-appropriate conversation. There's a lot of really great books and resources for parents to have those conversations with their boys, um, especially when boys are preteens and they're entering puberty, to have that conversation about sexuality, sexual behavior, sexual health, etc. Right? About consent, all of the things, right? That's kind of, if we think about our preteens to teenagers, kind of that's the point where we need to sit down with our kids and our boys and have those conversations. I don't think they can understand prior to that, but young people are engaging in sexual activity much earlier now. They're accessing sexual information. They're being exposed to pornography much earlier, or sexually explicit material online, or things that are not age appropriate, right? That are sexualized. And so the earlier that we can have those conversations, the better. But children will tell you, and it sometimes comes from their change of behavior. Like if you notice as a parent, your kid abruptly changes their normal behavior, their normal routines, their normal, like if a kid doesn't want you to like bathe them, or they have a response to you physically touching them in a certain place, right? You're just cleaning your child, or when they're in the bathroom, or they all of a sudden want privacy, or they respond, they push you away if you touch them a certain way, or they complain about a physical, like in their groin area or their bottom, right? Without going into too much detail, right? Those are things that are important for us to notice, right? To be aware of, because of course, as parents, we are all obligated to protect our children, right? And we're probably the first line of that defense. And the we just have to notice those things when there's just behavior out of the norm. My kid, um, when something is wrong, we know it. And that's what I meant earlier about our instinct, our gut, about our kids, and about the kids in our classroom, the kids that, in our community, our neighbors, etc. Um, trust your gut. If you feel like something is inappropriate between an adult and a child, trust your gut and report that, right? So we all have an obligation of reporting abuse, not just professionally, but personally. A lot of people don't understand that that's completely confidential. There's nothing that's going to come back on us. We're not, even if, again, we suspect, we believe, we think something is wrong, we should report it, because the thing that we see a lot is like people, oh, you know, I heard something, I saw something, and I didn't report it, and they feel horrible because something happened to that child or to that family or to that woman, and though there are all constant red flags, and we just need to pay attention to those things. And that's why I recommended The Gift of Fear for all of us, but especially for parents. Protecting the Gift is a really important book, because again, it'll help us kind of get in touch with that, with what we inherently have. It's not it's not a training, it's just like listening to your body, listening to that little voice in your head that's saying, hey, something is wrong here, something is not quite right. One of the things I've failed to talk about is that most of the time, a man will disclose the abuse to a family member or friend, someone who's trusted, who's close to him. They're not likely to come to your center like off the jump. They're likely to disclose to you their partner, um, like I said, a family member, friend, a coworker, classmate. They tend to be the first people that they disclose, right? And so it's important that that person is supportive, is listening, is understanding, doesn't victim blame them, um, and figures out how to ask the survivor how they want to be supported. Right? Do you want me to go with you to the center? Do you want me to, go with you to the police to report this? Do you want to report it? Do you want to tell your family member? Do you want to tell your partner? Do you want to tell your children? Do you want, like, you know what I mean? Like, what is the thing? What is it that you want to do with this information, right? And allow the male survivor to lead that, right? They may not want to do anything. You just needed to tell somebody, and that's okay. So that's this, you told me, and that's all you needed. Great. But I think, that's the most important thing that we can do is just listen and be supportive, and like I said, allow the survivor to guide what that support looks like long term. And again, the survivor may not want to do anything with that, and that's okay. And again, it's almost impossible to prove abuse, period, in the criminal justice system if evidence was not collected. And it makes for real challenges. You can't don't promise the victim or survivor anything. It's gonna get better. We're gonna hold the perpetrators accountable. We're gonna get you justice. That's we can't promise any of that. As advocates or as family members or friends, like we just can't promise any of that. We can't promise things are gonna get better. We can't promise none of that. So I would just be aware of your language, be reflective of what they're using it. So if they're saying, I was molested, oh, you were raped, like he raped you. That's not what they said. They said molested, right? They said they were touched, they were harassed. Whatever language, like your job is just to be a mirror and to be reflective of the language that they use, and um not to pressure them to do anything that they don't want to do, right? Like, because that's the thing is like their power, their consent was taken away from them. And so the best thing we can do is just to be consensual with everything in terms of what they share and how they share it and what kind of support we provide. But also, it's really important that you, as the person who's receiving that, get support.